I do not fight with a cool head today. I confess it. My eyes see only a red mist. I do not want them to run from the battle. I want their heads on our pikes by evening. For we have sharper, pointy things than them. Oh yes, much sharper. I want to bathe in their blood for a week. Now, kill them all! Mark your target when it comes! Now comes the hour when we test Roman courage!
Rome, Total War, was the game that cemented my love of the ancient Romans, and all other things in that ancient world time period. You faced the Greeks to seize control of the Mediterranean, fight the Gauls to the north, and even had to contend with Egypt at some point. And Conqueror's Empire Rises has all of that in an area control game in about 2 hours. This is a sponsored review, by the way, but that did not affect our scoring system. In Conqueror's Empire Rises, you'll play as one of the 6 ancient empire factions, from the Carthaginians to the Greeks to even the Persians. Yeah, not the 300 Xerxes, the real Xerxes. To conquer the ancient world, you know, the one where Turkey is renamed as Asia Minor, you'll recruit troops and fight with them, upgrade your asymmetrical civilization, and even use hero abilities like Alexander the Great. And this is the expansion to the base game Conquerors, which is a slightly more simple area control that doesn't have the elite units, upgrades, and some combat mechanics here. We have not played that base game though, we've only played the expansion twice, and within our 2 plays, we're discussing it like it's a standalone game because our experience of Conquerors is only via the expansion. One last thing, we're gonna refer to Conqueror's Empire Rises as just Conquerors for the rest of the review to keep things short. Got it? So Conqueror's Empire Rises equals Conquerors. How to play. The goal of Conquerors is to control 7 forts. Once you get that, you immediately win. These can be great forts, which can be people's capitals, and also the smaller forts. If no one gets 7 forts by the end of the 10 rounds of the game, you'll do a final scoring phase. To get people's forts, you'll manage armies all across the ancient world. More on that in a bit. Every round, you'll flip a Chronicle event card except for the first round that will do something for that round. Then everyone will get income by taxing certain territories they control, plus their 2 base income. Then you'll get to do one of these 3 policies. Either trade with someone or go on the other 2 boards to upgrade your civilization. If you trade with someone, you can't attack them this round. You'll both get money and maybe even some other benefits. If you go on one of the other 2 boards, you pay money to grab one of those upgrade cards. You have that permanently. You can upgrade your military or even build forts in regions you control. Then everyone will recruit troops on their forts. The great forts let you recruit cavalry, which are 2 strength as opposed to the infantry 1 strength. Just keep in mind that you must obey the food supply, where you can't have less troops than you have food supply areas controlled. You can also spend money to recruit your faction's special elite unit, or pay for one of your 4 hero cards, which give you bonuses in later combats. Finally, it's campaigning time. You can move each unit 1 space. Moving into water is a-okay. If you move into an opponent, you immediately start a combat, so let's get into that. First, you can have any neighboring army, 1 per player, next to the territory join, so they add their strength. Then if there's archers, they do a pre-fire roll to kill units before any fighting. They hit on a 4. Then each player will secretly play tactic and hero cards, which will help their sides through adding strength and giving differing abilities. And the icing on top is that you each roll a die and then add that much value to the combat. The losing side always loses at least 1 unit and then must retreat to a land space. Other casualties are from any of the schools played on the tactic and hero card abilities. Every player is also going to have a secret objective which gets them gold and victory points for endgame scoring, if that even happens. Once you achieve one of these, you just draw another random one from your faction. That's the bare bones. You just play up to 10 rounds of first flipping over a random event, then getting income from your territories. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I get 6. Then you pursue a policy on one of these boards here. Get that one, pay for it. Then you recruit troops. Recruit. Then you can campaign to actually fight your opponents. Pros! Now quick warning, this is a prototype game, so not all the components are finalized. To play this version of Conquerors, you'll have to have the base game of Conquerors and then this expansion here that we're actually reviewing today. So in totality, you're going to have some pieces from both of these, so I don't know exactly how your copy will look like. Like these player aids and rulebook were printed outside the normal manufacturer. But let's just get into praising the components of the game. Each of the 6 factions has 4 different types of wooden pieces. You got foot soldiers, cavalry, and archers all looking quite distinct and are a joy to move around the table. They even have a functional usage of being tipped over when exhausted. Every faction also has their unique elite wooden piece, so these come in all different shapes. Guy on a chariot for the Egyptians, big infantry for the Romans. There is a way through game found though to get the minis for each faction. These are detailed and sturdy, but we're gonna go ahead and use the wooden elite units for the rest of the review for consistency. Cards are also good quality, feeling great in the hand from the round event cards, small tactic cards, and also all the heroes. Oh, speaking of heroes, the 4 different heroes for each faction have awesome art. These nice portraits feel distinct from each other and really get you in the ancient world mindset. More art on the Chronicle cards again feels fitting to immerse you. Conquerors is also easy to set up and get going for an area control. You just place the 3 wooden pieces your faction starts with, explained on the back of your faction board. 1, 2, 3. Then you flip your player board over, get that in front of you, get all your wooden pieces next to you, place the cards on top that it says to place. Then you just set up these 3 smaller boards with their stacks of cards on top of them. Then you set up the independent armies on the board according to player count, and you're pretty much ready to start playing. So that gets us to the gameplay pros. The first is a definite asymmetry of all the ancient world factions in the game. There's 6 factions included, and they all feel distinct from each other in thematically fitting ways. First, each faction has one special ability, like the Carthaginians get +1 power in naval combat, or the Gauls getting +1 power when defending any green territory in Europe. Or the Egyptians get a reroll of 1 archer shot during combat. Then every faction has their elite unit that they can buy once, which are jacked up units that don't count towards your supply cap with sometimes special attributes. Like the Greek companion cavalry is worth 3 strength instead of 2. But then the Carthaginians' war elephants is a 4 strength cavalry, but loses 2 strength when fighting in water. Elephants don't do well in water. Once you lose these elites, you lose them forever, so you'll find each faction's way of using them carefully. Some more icing on the asymmetry cake are the 4 heroes each faction can buy throughout the game. And they're real heroes like Hannibal and Julius Caesar. They are unique abilities you can use during combat twice a game. They give additional strength to combat too, so seeing when to buy them and use them is a fun experience. Low cost ones like the 6 cost Darius I is a simple +1 to combat, but gets you 4 money if you win. The step higher is Cambyses, who is +2 strength, then +1 for every 2 enemy cavalry, so he's kind of anti-cavalry, and he gets you money if you win. The highest tier here for the Persians is Cyrus the Great. +4 strength buffs all your cavalry units and converts 1 enemy unit into yours if you win. And that's just the Persians, and for the most part you can simplify every hero card into 4 different types. Expensive ones that give you lots of power and can kill extra units and or get you money, cheap ones that give some power and give you extra currency for winning, medium power ones that can protect your troops or kill your opponents, and more medium power ones that are more situational, like boosting if on certain terrain or if you have certain units. However, there are some other hero abilities in the mix. Cleopatra can seduce an enemy unit to prevent them from participating in a battle, very good against elite units. Or Alexander the Great is the ultimate Greek trump card. If you win a fight with him where he boosts +4 in all your cavalry by 1, he lets the army move and attack again. If you add in the fact that you can use hero cards twice a game, you can literally attack 3 times with a single army with Alexander the Great to conquer a ton of the board in 1 turn. You can even attack more times on a turn with other abilities, but more on that in a bit. When we add in the faction abilities, elite units, and hero powers on top of the ancient world geography, every faction feels distinct, yet still grounded in the realism of the ancient world. Carthage and Rome are right next to the Mediterranean, and the Mediterranean hits so much of the map. So that's a tense fight for control of it. Romans can help defend the Mediterranean a little bit easier too because of the land bridges from Italy to the islands nearby. On the 6th player mode, owning parts of the Mediterranean also boosts your income. And the Mediterranean is the only way the Romans can leave Italy besides going through the independently controlled, strongly defended Alps. Then to the east, the Egyptians and Greek fight through Asia Minor in the 4-player mode, and can use it as a land bridge to get to each other's home if they don't want to bother with navy. With 6 factions to try, no doubt replayability is pretty good as you look at each faction's starting position and how to deal with those pesky neighbors. For fun, we noticed that the Greeks struggled the most with money, with no heroes giving them income, and so getting their trump card of Alexander the Great of 14 currency is kind of a hard thing. Or the Romans can play really good aggressive with strong heroes all around. One even giving them a freaking cavalry for free if they win. We actually want to praise the geography as a whole, where Conquest does a good job of connecting players, even though that you can only move 1 space at the start of the game. This is due to how each region is connected to multiple other regions, and the water is even more so in that case. Owning this space connects you to so many regions, that's the Mediterranean for you. If you want some numbers, on the 4-player map on the back of this, if you own the Aegean and Mediterranean Sea, you can touch every single space in 1 move except for 3 other spaces on the map. Granted, it's definitely not easy to hold onto all that water, and here we want to focus on the islands. We got Rhodes here, a tiny island in the Aegean that gives some food supply. And see how it's in the Aegean? So even if you own the Aegean, if you don't have that island also conquered, troops there are going to be a huge thorn in your back. Since anytime someone attacks the Aegean, those troops are definitely going to support that combat. Big shout out here to the Danube River, which flows both ways in this game to go from Northern Europe to Greece, which helps the Gauls attack the Greeks if they want, and vice versa. Or the Romans can just take the Danube to the Black Sea and launch a campaign from there. Because the map is so interconnected, it really lets a supporting system thrive, where anytime someone's adjacent to you and you're fighting, you can ask for help. Doesn't mean they'll give it to you, but you can still ask for the help. You could probably ask someone else if this guy doesn't want to help you, that guy can maybe help you. That sounds exactly like negotiation pros. Conqueror survived a lot of table talk, again helped by the interconnected map. So you can use money to help sweeten any deal, like helping someone by supporting them in a fight, or by just paying someone to attack your enemies for you. At the same time, supporting isn't free. It requires that player to exhaust their units, and those units can even die if the battle goes south with many casualty symbols. So the player supporting needs to have faith in the combat and be vested in its outcome. To make it even more juicy, if you support, regardless of outcome, you gain a tactic card. So you might want to just support a side just to get some fuel for later fights, and it can be up to them to accept or reject your support. There can even be a hilarious situation where you pay the people involved in combat to let you support them. And as we said before, because the map is so interconnected, it's possible that with each combat that 3, 4, or even 5 players are actually involved as they support one another. It's up to the players to determine how worth it is to exhaust their units, which translates to those won't be able to move until the end of the next campaigning phase, meaning that they're nerfing their next troop movement by doing some fighting now. Those troops also can't support again, so if they get attacked, then they're losing out on some troops. There's also some light negotiation going on with the trade mechanic, where you put your agent to trade with another player at the start of every round. This is some really simple, I trade with you, you hopefully trade with me thing, as we both get a little bit of coin every round to help grease later deals. Placing agents to trade on a player's color is also a little tricky because it means you can't attack that player this round. Next gameplay pro is that the army management as a whole is well done. If you look at the components on the map, it's pretty much just wooden pieces. So every turn for moving, it's literally just moving a bunch of wooden pieces, one space to march across the map. And you just do that multiple times. But with these tightly knit games, positioning is so careful. You have to make sure your army composition is efficient within your current supply, while posturing around your opponent's forts. Or maybe you'll try to attack for more supply spaces to boost your later army size? Or will they be attacking you on the very interconnected map? We haven't mentioned this much yet, but army composition is very important. You can decide to buff each unit in different ways. Since infantry are cheaper to spawn, you can get a stronger army by buffing them. Then you can spawn 2 from each of your great forts every turn, that's no joke. But cavalry can outposition infantry, since if you get the Thoroughbred card, you can move twice in a single turn, which means that you can attack twice in a single turn. That actually really opens up the map because you can cover about half the map in a single turn with that. It's a great way to facilitate game-ending turns, but remember, buffed infantry are just as strong as cavalry, and can even get upgraded for even more strength against cavalry. The archers also have some counterplay where they're good against cavalry because a single success roll from them takes out a premium unit, that is cavalry, so who cares how strong a cavalry is if it's dead? You can also invest into your navy if you want to pursue that strategy, meaning just troops onto water. Those are naval troops. This opens up a lot of aggression possibility where Amphibious Assault gets you +4 from sea to land. Oh, if you own the Mediterranean Sea, that's a lot of land you can conquer. We also want to praise how dice are handled in this game in a subtle but important way. The dice are modified. It's not a normal d6, instead it's 2 4s, 1 3, 1 2, and then 2 1s. This trickles down into the archers, where there's a 1/3 chance of hitting, which is very reasonable when you realize they don't actually contribute combat strength. Then for the actual combat roll, capping the bonus at 4 for the wartime uncertainty, the exact same as a base of the strongest heroes, lets close fights be concluded by the range of a 1 to 4, usually ending up in these climatic fights being won by margins. The dice just won't add enough strength to have a single infantry defeat a whole big army without some special ability interference. So if you've played area controls with dice like Axis and Allies or TI4 and got ticked about how a single tiny ship could take out so much because of really lucky dice rolls, that's not the case here. The dice are just a nice supplement to all the cards and abilities you're playing around. This adds up to every turn of Conquerors being this careful army calculation, where you're constantly gauging your opponent's upgrades for their troops, tactic cards in hand, units on the board, and then hero cards as you decide which combats to take. Conquerors also has some pretty neat progression. So you're not building engines or owning a lot of land unless you're about to win. The map really isn't that big, and getting income doesn't really start scaling up. The round by round feelings though definitely change over time. This is because owning one more region opens up a huge swath of areas to now attack because of all the adjacencies, and then also if you have an area with a fort in it, you can start spawning troops there. The Chronicle deck also does heat up a little as the rounds go on. Tier 1 cards are more about giving you more units or combat cards, but there's a forced march to get you an extra move and attack. Then Tier 3 has some equalizer cards to help prevent snowballing, but the Strong Winds card can straight up obliterate armies. +1 action from any unit from a sea late game is incredible. Like that means if any player has Amphibious Assault, they're going to be hunting for attacks on wherever is weak from the far-reaching waters. And or if they have Thoroughbred, which is likely for someone to have late game, That's part of that army having 3 attacks in a single turn. Also, your other armies can do the same thing. As long as you have units to attack, you can always attack. If we throw in the upgrades in with the hero cards, fights can get really climactic. You'll see that in late game, it's common for multiple people to be supporting a single siege, where the winner is contesting their 6th or 7th fort to close out the game. Oftentimes, those forts are someone's capital that forces them to relocate afterwards. Also, if the winner wins, they can attack again if they have upgrades. Alexander the Great. Holy cow, Alexander the Great combined with Thoroughbred means that your big army can attack 4 times in a single turn. This can be a 4 fort swing. As tactic cards continue to pile up in players' hands, it starts to get a little bit more unpredictable in how much people can add to each fight. And if they have a lot of casualties saved up in these tactic cards, a lot of the board can get wiped off of a single combat. This goes into our next pro, where you may be thinking, Conquerors is such a bloody game. What happens to the stragglers and these area controls when they get behind, maybe partially wiped off the map? Well, Conqueror is actually quite forgiving in multiple good ways, and that helps keep the pace of the game up. Losing units is not a big deal at all, because you spawn them for free every turn, as long as you hold forts. If your capital gets knocked off the map, well, you set up a temporary capital where your remaining units are. This acts like a great fort to continue to spawn troops. Or if you're a little behind in mid to late game after round 5, you can change your dynasty, which gives you 2 units, 2 supply, and 4 money. So players who are kind of behind mid to late game don't get completely swallowed up. This all culminates that come end game, it's more likely to have the game feel like multiple players are contesting a win. The last pro is that the ancient world theme meets the gameplay well. Your faction's hero abilities and also your faction base abilities go a decent way to making your faction feel somewhat real. The Carthaginians and Romans fight over the Mediterranean early game. Or if the Carthaginians can't get control of the sea, since their elephant doesn't do as well there, they can try to go by land. Hannibal goes through the Alps and then pushes down into Rome. Or how the Greeks want to push into Asia Minor, but the Persians also want it too. Maybe the Persians are launching amphibious assaults onto Sparta itself and Leonidas has to defend that? Look, I don't know everything about every single ancient world faction in this game, but I feel comfortable saying that if you like the ancient world, there's going to be some event you're going to be recreating in this game to some degree or another. Cons. The rulebook. Man, it's not terrible, like the flow of information is fine, but it does have some confusing things or omit other things that makes going through it a little weird. First, it doesn't have a component list or table of contents. So sometimes it was a bit tricky determining if we had the correct number of cards, or what a component was specifically called outside of reading the lines of text. It really would have helped if they specifically said what components are omitted from the base game. The examples how a casualty works is confusing because it says that the defeated army suffers a casualty no matter what. But it doesn't clarify that a shield from a tactic card can negate that casualty. But it definitely does if you look at how casualty is worded. The way supporting combat works is also confusing because every player can support the battle. But then the rules say if a third player is reinforcing. Wait, don't they mean all the players reinforcing? Because that's how the game was specifically designed. Saying third player can make people think only one other person can support one battle. Other times the rulebook is wasting time. Like it says that the winner of a battle gains 1 tactic, then the defeated player blah 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 gains 1 tactic, then later in the case of a tie, both players draw a tactic card. Like, why not just say that every player draws a tactic card? Or later it says that other players who are reinforcing gain military experience from reinforcing one of the sides. What the heck is military experience? They totally mean to just say draw a tactic card. Just say tactic card. There's some explanations that are definitely coming, like making it more clear that Thoroughbred is moving and attacking instead of just these symbols. And I really hope that what an action is on this strong wins cards is clarified, because the game doesn't refer to as campaigning as actions. Also, can you reject someone who's trying to support you on a combat to deny them tactic cards? Yes, you can. Rulebook needs to say that. Oh, also play a round on the player aids is play around. I mean, I definitely like to play around. This is a funny chuckle, but that's probably gonna get fixed. Spell checker doesn't check these things. Visibility cons. So there seems to be some misprinting on the 4-player side with some regions that are not cut off, or how the Mediterranean reaches all the way around to Northern Europe, that it does not look like that in the rulebook. There seems to be some type of line missing there. And then on the 5 to 6 player side, the supply marker for Britannia is really hard to see. Throughout the game, every time there's a cost for money, it is extremely hard to see and also confusing. So it shows a number in red against a darkish background, which from far away is actually unreadable. Then it also puts it next to a money symbol, but the money symbol is a coin with a 1 in it. So it looks like there is a number, then there is a 1 coin next to it, which made some people think that the cost was actually just 1 coin. For this, either just put multiples of the currency there, or just take out the number in the currency and make the text white with a black outline. And just make this all bigger. Two of the wooden elite units are also kind of weird to use in practice. The Greek elite unit actually looks like 2 units, and infantry and cavalry one behind other units, which is confusing. Then the Carthaginian elephant does not look like an elephant since the legs of the elephant aren't there. It looks more like a slug now. All the component cons we have are also in relation to being hard to see, so let's get into those now. You see these tiny things right here? These things right here? Probably not. These are how you keep track of supply in this game. And my goodness, they are so tiny. These chits, which multiple of can fit inside my fingernail, slide around all the time, are hard to see, and just overall are not pleasant to use. They also just don't have an actual place to put them, because if you put them on the food area, you won't fit all of them, and if you put it above the food area, there's still, well, not enough space. The more players you play with, the worse this gets. Also, purple, black, and maybe even green, depending on your lighting, can look very similar. The time tracker is the same issue as these. It's the teensy tiny dot. Hopefully these are all much bigger, and then the supply has a much more fleshed out track in the final printing. More teensy tiny is the battle tracker, which is used to keep track of combat. You probably won't go over 60 strength in this game, but it's still useful to have something for the big combats. But these two chits are so small and extremely fiddly and stick to your finger all the time when moving them around. Also, the unit upgrade board not having a spot for all the stacks of cards requires you to either stack them kind of on top of each other, which gets messy fast, or put some of the decks on the table. Either way, there's not really a designated spot for all these decks. We would have liked to see set areas to put each stack. They can definitely hang off the sheet. The last visibility con has to do with the heroes, where we thought it was a very odd decision to have the cost of the heroes only on the back of the card, not on the front. We can see why they're on the back, so then you can keep track of what your opponents have bought and then counterplay them there, but why not just have the cost on the front too, so you don't have to keep flipping the cards around when you're choosing which ones to buy. Your gameplay con side, let's talk about the buildings you can buy. The Bazaar is pretty much a never worth it buy. It's a building that gives you 1 income a turn for costing 4 money, and then it doesn't give you the benefit the turn you buy it. That means that if you buy it on round 1, you have to wait until round 5 to break even 4 taxations later. Round 5 is mid-game. Seeing how money is really important to get hero abilities that get you maybe more money or upgrades that help you win fights, we can't really see a reason to buy a Bazaar. It's also only worth 1 victory point command game scoring, so you're not going to buy it for points. At the same time, forts are incredibly cheap at only costing 3, which is not only a victory goal, but also spawns you a free troop every turn you own it. So the cost for Bazaar and forts should definitely be swapped. The next gameplay con has to do with your hidden agendas. We didn't get to mention this in pros at all because these are all over the place of what they're asking for and their payouts. Some of them are quite doable, like playing as the Carthaginians and holding Sicily for 3 rounds. You could possibly convince the Romans to vacate it voluntarily. Or the Egyptians holding Asia Minor for 1 round. Definitely doable with some decent bloodshed against the Greeks and or Persians. Just grab your 6 money as a nice boost to your income on top of getting those forts. But then other goals start to get so hard, like taking all of North Africa as Egyptians. That's knocking out an entire player's home base and the regions around it for only 10 coins? Like, that's it? What? Not even double? Or the Romans have to take the Persian capital, which is pretty much on the other side of the map. Doing this should practically win you the game. These hidden agendas are quite bizarre, because if you get an unlucky draw, you practically just have to ignore them. Thank goodness this Chronicle card exists that allows players to discard and draw a new hidden agenda. Otherwise, some players open the game, draw a nigh impossible agenda, and then just have to not get the currency benefit for the entire game. Besides just tweaking the difficulties and payouts, especially to reflect playing with higher player counts more, we would actually reward players even harder by letting these be an avenue to win the game. That's right, doing these should give you some way to win the game. Once they're tweaked, we're thinking that once you complete your first agenda, then you draw another one, and then this one gets revealed to everyone. Once you achieve this, then you'll win the game. This would keep up with the mantra of the variable round time on the game, and seeing how all of these are conquest driven anyways, you're getting rewarded by doing a hard conquest here. We realize that once you finish your second agenda, you're probably so ahead on the board anyways by winning some decisive battle that you're contesting a win anyways. Last gameplay con is how you can farm tactic cards. See, regardless of player count, there will always be the white-colored independents on the board, who never attack but hold key forts from the beginning of the game. The thing is that every time you fight them, you draw a tactic card afterwards no matter what. So you can run in with a weak disposable infantry, intentionally lose the fight, then get that tactic card. This can get really abused when you see the Chronicle card that gives 2 tactic cards every time you fight that round. You can't really even play around your opponent doing this, as while they're losing infantry they didn't pay anything for, they're getting tactic cards which are worth more strength. And then they can just respawn the infantry very easily next turn. It's not like they're paying for them. And of course, the independents will get eliminated at some point because their forts are too good not to get, so then this problem will no longer exist. But then the damage from getting too many tactic cards can already be done in the early to mid game. We would just say to not give you tactic cards as a result from fighting independence, or you have to have at least 3 units when fighting independence, which prevents you from doing the 1-by-1 infantry go in and die and then get tactic card spam. The next con we're a little bit more uncertain of is issues with player count. In such a negotiation heavy game, this is something that's hard to test without more playthroughs. We only had time for 2 playthroughs before the release of this video. So this con is that the 5-player mode that was recommended to me by the designer seems to have some weird issues. Now, I'm not sure if this is because we're new about the game or because of our player tendencies, but we found that when you play with 5 players, the 4 players on the map are engaged in 1v1s, while the 5th guy was able to just move around scot-free, especially since players usually don't want to fight more than 1 battle a round if they can help it early game. Seeing how on this map it's scaled for 5 to 6 players, the absence of the 6th player is just where the unscathed player takes regions snowballing around the map. But again, we're not really too sure if this is a real issue because we might just be new. The 4-player side in our test seems to handle the power vacuums much better than 5-player. However, this section made the cons because of how the agent placing works. The gameplay is much more smooth at 4 players to block off others from doing specific purchases. At 5 players, there really isn't that much tension because there's 2 slots for each agent. So you can't really block someone from getting that critical cavalry upgrade, unless you manage to convince others at the table to also place their precious agent there. So again, yeah, because this game is so political, playing with 5 players might not be that bad because you can just pay other people to balance out the power vacuums. This is something that could totally just be in nitpicks and not cons with more testing, but this is what we came up with. Now on to nitpicks. 2 gameplay nitpicks. The first is that in the preparation phase, you know, where the phase that you spawn units on all your forts, you buy your elite unit, and then you buy your hero cards. The game tells you should do this all simultaneously. Everyone goes at once. While we totally agree that this keeps the game running smoothly, there are some unit buys and some hero buys that definitely counter your opponents. You can run into the honor code problem of the one guy just sitting there waiting for everyone else to do their move before they purchase theirs. And if you have 2 people doing that, well, then you don't really have a purchasing phase. So we would say to at least write in the option for players to buy things in preparation in player order. This next one isn't that bad of an issue, but the archer upgrade Deadly Aim, which unlocks the 3 as a hit for your rolls, is a bit underpowered. Getting this upgrade is only increasing your rolling by 1/6 because there's only 1 3 on the die to join the 2 4s, while the other upgrade is giving you an entire reroll. There's not many situations we can think of where a player would get both of these, and almost always with the rapid aim first. But then with the agent blocking at 4 and 6 players, we can see a case to grab this if there's not any upgrades open. Final nitpick is that this game does run a little bit longer than projected, but hey, right? It's a negotiation game, so table talk increases the time, and the time going longer because of that doesn't matter too much. Also, do note that the game could end before round 10, so you could have a fast game. Anyways, we're pretty uncertain to say how long this game is exactly going to take for you, but the designer told me that there has been plenty of games that went to 3 hours, but not over. Our first game that ended on round 4 went over 3 hours with 5 people, but then our second game ended at round 10 with 4 people at just about 3 hours. So your mileage will vary. Scoring! Now it's time for a tentative score on Conqueror's Empire Rises, the expansion to Conqueror's Final Conquest that we're basically reviewing as a standalone game, even though you do need the base game to play. So we're trying to critically evaluate the aforementioned pros and cons of this prototype with the caveat of whether or not this is even a good idea in the first place. Changes are definitely coming, but we can say for this version of Conqueror's Empire Rises, this is gonna get a 6 out of 10, it is above average. But to just get it out of the way, if you like the ancient world theme and like medium weight area controls and like some dice rolling, but combats are usually won with whoever prepares better with heroes, upgrades, troop management, and negotiation, we would say to not overthink it and just invest in a copy of this. A lot of the jank with the components of rules are definitely going to get ironed out, and things like the hidden agendas being weird, or also the tactic card farming are things that are really easy to fix, or even house rule if you want. As such, Conqueror's core game is very solid, and with some changes, the game could easily raise to a 7 out of 10. For all the fighting, asymmetry, and politicking, Conqueror's really doesn't have that many rules or upkeep. Core gameplay decisions revolve around how to position your dozen or so wooden troops between land and water, or how to spend your money. Will it be be on a hero or a permanent upgrade to have your army specialized? Will you be able to do the 2 to 3 attacks in one turn to win? Or is your opponent actually planning that against you and you need to retreat some troops closer to your capital? Just do keep in mind that this game is more grounded in being a traditional area control game like Game of Thrones, the board game, where you can posture a lot and talk a lot, but not really much can happen in terms of fighting early if players play carefully. However, Conquerors is a much more interconnected map with swinger abilities that can transform the board, sometimes even with the help of some friendly archer pre-fire rolls. The comparisons to Game of Thrones 2nd edition are real. I mean, you conquer 7 forts, and look at all the troop pieces looking so similar and you knock them over, huh? So yeah, if you got a group of friends of between 4 to 6 who like the area controls, open negotiation, and like this theme a lot, definitely check this out. But if you're a fan of, say, Root, Conquerors probably isn't as asymmetric or chaotic enough for your liking. It's usually a more careful push and pull. Root is a lot more asymmetrical chaos. Anyways, shout out to all the Rome Total War fellow fanatics out there who are likely salivating at the mouth over this theme. If I had the chance to, I would bet hard money that the design team played a lot of Rome Total War. I mean, I did a little bit of a refresher, and even the Egyptians have chariots like they do in this game, and have the best archers, just like they do in Conquerors. And heck, if they're playing a lot of Rome Total War, then Conquerors has a strong future ahead of it. It definitely looks like the game was designed around 6 players, seeing how the 6-player map is fleshed out the most. As a bonus, here's some stuff upcoming for it. There's going to be an Emperor's Edition Game Found pledge that includes new player mats with new artwork. It includes different houses per faction, meaning different abilities and starting positions, and 2 new heroes per faction, siege mechanics, and more. Holy cow, this would really enhance replayability. Like, there's now going to be siege engines that are worth 5 strength when attacking forts, also from Game of Thrones, and then ships that have 5 strength in water. Then there's going to be alliance cards kind of like Dune, where you can team up with another player and you get some of their abilities, and when you win the game, you win together. So you can have the Romans and Gauls team up, which is kind of hilarious. And finally, there's going to be an additional policy board, these guys right here to put your agents on. The new one's going to be called Mega Projects to build more stuff. You can have temples and military wharfs, which are way more interesting than the bazaar that gives you 1 money. So yeah, exciting stuff for Conquerors, but what is my enjoyment of this game? My personal score for Conquerors is going to be a 7 out of 10. I have a good time with it. Yep, you got me. I love Rome Total War and all things ancient world, so this theme, automatic yes for me. Controlling war elephants, upgrading Roman legionnaires, shoot down your enemies with bowmen from afar? Yes, yes, yes. All those hours huddled in front of my computer in middle school. Now I can take these Roman Mediterranean experiences and play them with my friends in like 2 or 3 hours. And with actual table talk, because Rome Total War doesn't really have that. Somewhat in the 5P version, but very much so in the 4P version, I feel very connected to everyone and have to be very mindful of what they're doing at all times. Granted, the diplomacy isn't as nuanced as Twilight Imperium with all those trade cards and voting, but for the relatively simplistic turns, Conquerors definitely checks off the area control negotiation box for me. As such, it's always so interesting to see how people move their troops every turn, and combat outcomes are very fun to witness because they typically end up with many troops dying, and then I can plan my next conquest, mwahaha. The heroes are also fun, although not as asymmetric as I would have liked, but the higher tier ones are quite fun to plan conquests around, and I can really feel those pivotal moments in games when the heroes are on the table and players are eyeing which combats are worth using them for. There's something very satisfying about having multiple units attacking each other after many rounds of planning. Then you have tension in rolling for archers, then you have tension in what cards are being played, and then you can unleash a ton of tactic cards you saved up. Then if the battle is still close, you have the controlled 1 through 4 dice roll, which is done well.
Yes! Yes! No! Okay, we're both work forward.
I've had many fights won or lost by 1 point. I've had some combats even tie too, which leads to some cool adapting you have to do. However, maybe I am spoiled by Prophecy of Kings for TI4 because I definitely feel like there's something missing here with the passive abilities and loadouts of each side. I would have liked to see more asymmetry, so the Emperor's expansion to this expansion of Conquerors seems like it would seal the deal for me and raise the score to an 8 out of 10. I like thinking about different openings for games, and there isn't quite enough here to keep my attention more than playing each faction once. But hey, that is at least 4 games, so not bad at all. At its current form, Conquerors actually would have blown my mind in high school, where Game of Thrones 2nd edition was our de facto big area control game before we bought Twilight Imperium 3. But now we have Twilight Imperium 4, and for 1 to 2 more hours, I definitely play that over Conquerors, but I mean, hey, that's my favorite game, and our group has all played it a lot, so we're really into the strategy, but hey, that's my area control expectations. It's something I would have to keep tweaking with the house rules and bringing out maybe once a year or so, because I do have some buddies that are super into this ancient world theme just like me. That was Conquerors, Empire Rises. Again, you have to have the base game and this to play, so not sure how that works out on GameFound, but definitely, yeah, I have a good time with this game. Please let me know what you think about a game like this. Pretty freaking solid. Yeah, anyways, thank you to our patrons also for making videos like these possible. All right, here, thank you guys so much. We also got our Mad Lads of Cardboard. Thank you, Mad Lads of Cardboard. Yeah, that's it for this video. We'll have some more fun videos coming out to close the month of July. Yeah, so remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Bye-bye.